friends, and welcome to an episode of Bite Size Bish. On today's episode, I'm going to talk a little bit about Real Housewives of Rhode Island Reunion Part 2, some news about Rhode Island that came out after the reunion, and I'll also be talking a little bit about the Valley, mostly just to roast Danny, and if I have time, next gen New York City, but here's what I decided. So for those of you who follow me on Instagram at Your Bish Therapist and look forward to my interpretations, they moved next gen New York City to the same night as the Valley, and I cannot physically cover 2 shows in a night. Can't do it. So what I decided that I'm going to do is I'm going to continue to post clinical interpretations of the Valley because I think that's more rich in terms of my purposes. And I'm going to talk about Next Gen New York City on the podcast because it's so good. I'm really loving it. I love Riley. I love Ariana. I mean, I just feel like there are sweet little babies. So that is my plan for that. And so for anyone listening to this, if you could please check out my podcast. If you haven't already, give it a 5-star review. And for those who are interested in some bonus apps, early releases, full video, please come to my Patreon, patreon.com/yourbishtherapist. So, Real Housewives of Rhode Island, after the second part of the reunion aired, we find out that Liz is leaving. Here's Liz's statement that she posted on Instagram. I'm full of gratitude for the amazing opportunity to appear on the show. As filming for season 2 begins, I have made the decision to take a step back and focus on my family, my work, and my passions. The RHORI cast is an amazing group of women who have created something special. I'll be watching next season, rooting for continued success of this franchise. For now, I look forward to enjoying this little corner of the world from the other side of the camera. Now, for those of you who aren't aware, Liz spent the entire reunion and basically the entire season talking about this person, Dino. And after Real Housewives of Rhode Island aired, her connection to Dino, whose last name is Guilmette, Guilmette, he appeared on the first season of Real Housewives of Rhode Island at a house party and is facing serious criminal charges, including 7 felonies and 1 misdemeanor, ranging from drug dealing to fraudulently obtaining COVID-19 relief money to conspiracy. He's also allegedly the suspect of a separate investigation that documents suggest involves his connection to the McGraws, who own Slater Compassion Center, a retail cannabis store in Providence. And so that came from the Providence Journal. I can't read the full, they don't let me read it. But basically, Dino, it was alleged that he was working for La Cosa Nostra in Philadelphia. And on June 25th, he rejected a plea deal that would have seen him completely escape jail time for drug and fraud charges. But in my experience, when you would rather die in jail than talk about the situation that you're in, that tells us there's some really scary folks that you are very concerned about. And I think that's really wild. So Liz posted a story to her Instagram after she posted her original, why she wasn't coming back. She said, "It's fascinating to me how everyone assumes my reason for leaving involves being afraid of skeletons, jail, etc. This is not new gossip. It has been the local slander for years. If there were even an ounce of validity to it, I'd not have ever gone on a show. I realize that for some, it feels good to speculate, hate, and defame my character, but I have never been investigated nor involved in any criminal case. It's preposterous," she says, "and people should know how utterly ridiculous it sounds. Sorry to disappoint. It's wild to me how people feel at liberty to openly state such absurd claims as facts. Now that I have time on my hands, I will start the process of holding those originating and spreading such fiction accountable." Which, yikes. Let me be clear. Liz is a very scary person, so I am mindful of how I cover this because that last bit of what she said is giving threats. It feels very La Cosa Nostra mob, like, you better shut up or I'm going to come after you. And I think that that's what makes Liz so scary, is that she can seem really nice and friendly, but if you upset her, she turns into a completely different person. So basically what's happened is in 2021, Rhode Island State Police alleged that he ran a cocaine operation in allegiance with the Patriarca crime family in New England. He has not been formally indicted for mafia-related racketeering, and his lawyer has denied these mafia ties. So he is facing 88 years behind bars if convicted. He rejected a plea deal to avoid jail. Like, he would have avoided jail with his plea deal, and he's not having it. So Liz and Jerry were dragged into the legal proceedings in 2021 when they were named as Dino's associates in the affidavit, but they have not been accused of criminal activity. And fans, this is why Liz posted this, because fans speculated that she pulled out in anticipation of Dino's trial. And so here's the thing. I think that it is probably, there's things going on, right? They are not held together with gum and paper clips. They are investigated by people who are at the top of their game. They know what they're doing. So I guess my point is that everyone is innocent until proven guilty, but Dino's behaviors are very, very concerning, very suspicious. And I believe that Liz's behaviors have been concerning in terms of just her approach, her personality. And I think it's probably best that she doesn't come back. The other interesting thing is that Liz was like the ringleader of this mean girl gang. It was Liz, Joellen, and Kelsey. And I want to predict right now that with Liz gone, it will allow Joellen to pick the lane that she wants to go in. Because what I was saying, Mandy and I did a podcast about part 1 of the reunion. And what I noticed is that, to me, Joellen is an example of a trauma survivor who she went so hard for Rula, I believe, because she has, like, trauma survivors have a fixation on creating justice when they see injustice happening. And the reason for that is because when children are made to feel like they're bad. So Joellen was the black sheep. She was like, you're bad, you're loud, you're a problem, you're doing all these things. We're going to send you to these facilities. We're going to label you as a bad kid. When in reality, Joellen was just reacting to the fact that her mom had some very serious narcissistic traits and tendencies, couldn't love her the way that she needed. And so Joellen was just appropriately acting out because of understanding the family dynamic. And those children in those families will always be labeled the problem child and will be, labeled the black sheep, the problem. But the real problem is that they had the nerve to disrupt the family dysfunction. They had the nerve to be born into a situation that they didn't ask to be born in, to look around and to appropriately clock what's going on, to say it. And then family are like, oh, no, you're crazy. You're the problem. We are all fine. And so I believe that Joellen went so hard for Rula because they accused Joellen of being a liar. And if you want to accuse Joellen of being a liar, she will tell you how she's not a liar. Now, do I think some of Joellen's behavior was a little bit obnoxious towards Rula? I definitely do. But I've seen this before with trauma survivors, because sometimes we do things to seek justice that make us look like assholes. And I say us because I'm a trauma survivor. I am the black sheep. I know of what I speak. And I understand it from the other perspective, the clinician perspective, in terms of family dynamics. And I just think that I've behaved like an asshole before in seeking justice for things that I felt were unjust. So that's why I'm saying us, because I think sometimes people do not understand, listening to this podcast, that it is led by someone who is mentally and physically chronically ill. And I'm just trying to keep my head above water and survive and help other people survive and thrive. So Rula, this reunion, I talked a lot about like her displaced and misdirected anger, because if she puts the anger where it belongs with Brian, her life unravels. Now, she and Brian have been married for 10 years and they have 2 kids. And I think that's why she's holding on so hard. Rula and Brian have also been divorced before. And that is what came in this reunion, is seeing that there was some questions in terms of like how Rula and Brian started their relationship. Joellen was asking about timelines and when did you get married, because he was married and then it seems like there was overlapping timeline. Honestly, I'm not going to even get into the weeds of the specifics of this because I think this is just semantics and Rula and Brian are just trying to evade any sort of accountability. For example, Rula said Brian made a mistake. And I'm like, okay. So Brian had a 2.5-year-long full-blown affair with a woman who he gave part of his business to. And that is thousands of choices made consistently every day. And that is not a mistake. That is a betrayal. And I think that Rula is too focused on tearing down the women who are involved, like the mistress. She calls the mistress crazy. And I don't like when women do that. They will take down other women and not place the blame squarely where it belongs, which is that it belongs with Brian. And then she's, yelling at Joellen and she's saying the F word a million times. And it's just like, Rula is angry with Brian, but if she lets herself feel that, then her life falls apart. So Joellen and the mistress are proxies, but also the mistress, which I hate calling her that because she's like a human, but I also don't know. She's like not in this, so I'm just mindful of how I talk about her, but she did post something on social media, basically like kind of threatening, this was not a mistake. And then she like held up her ring finger and she had like it was like a red stone on her ring finger. And she just like said, there's like more to the story. And I mean, I'm going to be honest, what I believe happened allegedly is that Brian wanted out of this relationship because it sounds like he's done this before with Rula. He was married. He and Rula dated. There was question marks around the timing. So Brian to me seems like a guy who needs an exit plan before he actually exits. And for me, all the flags are showing that Brian wanted out of this relationship and he did not anticipate Rula holding on so hard. I think he is a coward. I think he is a troll. And I think he is completely ballless and thought that this would be enough for Rula to just walk away and then he could spend his life with his mistress until he found another person to move on to when he got tired of her. That's what I believe, allegedly. But he did not anticipate Rula in denial and wanting to hold on to him so hard, which it is hard to believe why you would hold on to Brian so hard. Okay, so at the end, Rula told Brian, I'm so tired of this, and you can't even say anything. It's taxing. And you know what Brian's response was? To compliment her eyelashes and walk away. This man, why are people fighting over him? What is wrong? Are there no other men in Rhode Island? I'm literally stuttering because I do not understand. But for me, one of like the huge red flags was Andy brought up this tracker incident. And so to remind everybody, Brian was arrested for placing a tracker on Rula's car after she went to Rhode Island State Police to make a report. In Rhode Island, placing an electronic tracking device on someone's car without their consent is considered a misdemeanor domestic violence offense. And the reason for this is because stalking signals elevated risk for future violence. It just does. So Brian pled not guilty and Rula had the charges dropped in December. And of course, Brian was like, well, again, he's so mush-mouthed because he doesn't want anything that comes out of his mouth to incriminate him. So he's just like, hey, but the most concerning part for me came when Brian said, so because it was a misdemeanor domestic violence charge, there was a no contact order between him and Rula. And this is really, really important. And Brian said that the no contact order made him miss and appreciate Rula. And I just want to be super clear. The no contact order didn't make him miss her. It made him fear he was losing control over her, which is not only a big difference, but also a giant fucking red flag. People online, I'm going to be careful how I say this, they had concerns that this could turn into a true crime situation. And psychologically, what I'm trying to tell you, what I'm seeing, all of these flags, we've seen before, and they haven't ended well. So I think that Brian, I wouldn't put it past him to do something really dangerous because stalking is really indicative of serious, dangerous issues. Pathological lying, despite evidence literally being in front of your face. Past behavior is the best predictor of future behavior. And, here's the one thing. I love that Ashley And Rosie let her know, we know that you deserve better than this. Ashley said, you know you're better than him. And like, I love that she said it and she didn't care that if Brian heard it. And I hope that Brian did hear it, because while Rula's behaviors are frustrating to me, I understand where they come from. And I do believe that she is a victim, but I do also want her to do better for her and her kids, because right now she's choosing Brian instead of choosing her and her children. And that for me is the real issue, which, you know, sometimes when we're trying to cling to a relationship that doesn't serve us, we do abandon the things that are really important. And there's no shame in that, because I know so many folks who have done that. But I think that she needs to get her and her children into like a safe situation with people who aren't intent on hurting her over and over and over. And oh, this was the other thing. So Brian told Rula that his affair was over like October or something of last year. And Joellen was like, I have proof that it's not true, but it is over as of this year. And again, Rula was really angry and she was like, what? And it's like, when you have someone who is a pathological liar, who tells lies more than they tell the truth, past behavior is the best predictor of future behavior. These aren't behaviors that are going to remit or go away without intervention. And Brian's not interested in intervention. He's not interested in anything other than doing whatever he's doing and getting away with it. So I think that was, I don't know, just really wild to me. The other thing is, like, I go back and forth about Rosie because I feel like Rosie was cast and then the Mean Girls didn't want her in their clique. And Joellen and Kelsey and Liz have maligned her character with no proof whatsoever that any of it is factual. But then I saw on social media that Rosie was DJing for Dave Portnoy's book event. And I'm like, girl, are women just like, let's just do these things for these terrible, awful, like gross men. Can't we do better than that? I swear to you, I don't know where I fall with half of these women. I'm like, I need a season 2. I need to see a little bit more of these people. You know, Rosie is like a gay icon, but it's like, well, if you're supporting Dave Portnoy and some other really heinous people, like, are you an ally? I just, you know, allyship is seen in our behaviors and in our votes. And I don't know. I have some real concerns with that. So the last thing I'll say before I move on is that Alicia and Billy, oh my gosh. So I really want to say justice for Billy, because I think a lot of folks on social media, a lot of people really had it wrong with Billy, which is that, you know, he's a financial abuser and these things. And it's like, no, that doesn't seem true at all. Billy is happy to give Alicia everything she wants. Alicia has her head in the sand and she has no interest in being involved. Billy's like, I've set up trust. And she's like, what's a trust? And then he's like, I want you to come to our monthly financial meetings. And she's like, a meeting? And so I think that Billy deserves a lot of apologies from a lot of folks who maligned his character, essentially. And at the end of the day, he's just trying to give Alicia what she wants. And Alicia talked about it's boring and et cetera, et cetera. So on camera, Billy presented Alicia with a contract, giving her 50% of his Pizza Mama shares. And Andy, oh my God, Andy goes, we've had a housewife who signed documents that she didn't read and it didn't go so great. And I died. Because the funny thing about this Real Housewives of Rhode Island is the fact that it is very Jersey-esque. It gives early seasons of Jersey, like it gives that same feeling, which is one of the reasons I feel like it's so successful, because Rhode Island, you know, it's not super removed or far from Jersey in terms of like location, and also it seems like culture and things like that. But Alicia like did sign the paper. She's like, I feel bad, you know, and it's like, again, that was another flag for me in terms of Alicia's like, here, I want this. And then Billy's giving it to her and she's like, but I feel bad. And it's like, again, I think this is an Alicia issue. I think that Billy's a good guy. I think he's committed to her and their child. And if I'm being honest, all Billy wanted was for Alicia to drive her daughter to dance. Cause again, I guess like, and this does happen on the East Coast. I've noticed where people will drive their kids to these cheer camps or whatever that are so far away, like, but every day. And Alicia can't, because of her driving anxiety, she can't drive more than 20 minutes. And I think that it's more than fair and for Billy to say, like, Billy works full time and he works a lot of hours and he's the one going back and forth, which ends up being like 4 hours a day or something like that of driving. And so I think I have a lot of empathy for driving anxiety. And I'm going to be honest, this is one of the issues that in my practice I treated really successfully a couple of times. Like people who literally couldn't even get in a car. And then by the time we were done, they were on major interstates, just like vibing and thriving. It is a very treatable issue. Our anxiety really needs to be challenged. Otherwise, it just gets worse. And so for Alicia's sake, I hope she really does work on that. You know, anxiety is very powerful, but truly as someone who has PTSD and a lot of anxiety, you really have to check it and challenge it. Otherwise, it will completely take over your brain like vines on a house. It'll just like completely take over if left unchecked. So I hope that she works on that. And also, that's like a really great time to spend with children. I find like when I drive my nieces and nephews, some of the best conversations I have with them are when they're in the back of my car and they're kind of just looking out the window and they're not paying attention. And, you know, we just talk about silly things and important things and all of that. So I hope for everyone's sake, Alicia works on her anxiety and justice for Billy. So before I lose too much time here, I also did kind of want to talk about the Valley because it is so bad. For my purposes, I have a lot to say about it, but it's also kind of like exhausting me. And so if you're someone who's like exhausted by the Valley, I suggest you don't watch. Also, if you don't want to listen to these recaps, that's fine too. I just want people to do whatever they need for their mental health. So we find out in this most recent episode that Janet was triggered by Danny because of her own experiences with sexual assault. And I think that's really, really important because, you know, at the table, Tom Schwartz was like, it's not her pain. Why is she holding on to it? And what I said about Joellen, it kind of also goes in this situation too, where Tom Schwartz is wrong and everyone is not understanding that Janet's pain is projected onto the situation where she's seeing a man engage in inappropriate physical touch without consent and then continue to yell about, get uncomfortable, like he thinks that's funny. And so I just want to say that with Janet and survivors of sexual assault get triggered watching sexual acting out behaviors be met with less attention than they deserve or be met with no consequences. And so the same thing with Joellen in terms of like the seeking justice piece of it is that I think Janet seeking justice, it made her look like an asshole. But at the end of the day, she was calling out Danny and being like, why are these behaviors still being brushed under the rug? Or why am I the one who's a problem? And honestly, I really do feel like justice for Janet. I have never seen such public vitriol for a person who talked about what someone else did over the somebody who did that thing. I've never seen this. On my Instagram, I literally have to block people constantly whenever I post about this. And I think that's super indicative. Like I'm talking about block 20, 30 people. Like I haven't had to do this in years over Danny Bucco. And so I just am so grossed out and perplexed. And so it's like, I want to be clear, it doesn't make Danny less problematic, but it does explain why Janet went so hard on behalf of Jasmine and Melissa. And personally, I think it's a brave thing to say, this happened to me. This is how I feel. I may be projecting it onto other people, but this is why this is so hard for me. I think that was very brave for Janet. And I do not get all the hate and the public vitriol for her. I don't. I mean, I understand it logically, but I think women specifically, I'm going to be honest, the people who were in my comments were either bots or women who are happy to uphold the patriarchy to support Danny fucking Bucco. Okay. Can we just pause on that for a minute? If you are tearing down a real person online, i.e. me, insulting my intelligence, all this other stuff for a parasocial relationship with Danny Bucco, you got to go to therapy. I'm going to be honest. Go to therapy because that's fucking insane. And by the way, I will continue to block people like nobody's business because my page is I treat it like it's my purview. I wouldn't let people come to my door and say nasty things. So you're not going to come to my community and be nasty to me and everyone who doesn't agree with you. So I will continue to block people like nobody's business. But here's something that I felt was like super gross that I wanted to point out. So Danny and Nia's pursuit of like public adoration and just being the perfect couple, which to me seems kind of gross and pathological. Nia, in a confessional, made a really inappropriate comparison, and it did not sit right with me. And I just want to put this out there and see what people think. So in a confessional, Nia claimed that Zach, who's a gay man, was inappropriate towards Jason and Jesse. She said Zach gave Jason, quote unquote, a lap dance and licked Jesse's face, stating, "That's inappropriate and no one is talking about that." The biggest problems here is that Jason and Jesse didn't express feeling uncomfortable in any way, shape, or form. So Nia is literally doing what everyone accused Janet of, co-opting other people's experiences to weaponize it for her benefit. But this time, she's just making things up to weaponize it for her benefit. And I'm confused about all those people who stan Nia and Danny and think that this is okay, but what Janet did was not. So also, to me, I'm going to be honest, I would assume being friends with Zach means that they are allies, but this intimation that it's somehow inappropriate, I want to know why. Why would you say that's inappropriate when Jason and Jesse didn't say that they were uncomfortable? Why would you say that? I don't know. It feels like there's a gross underbelly under that comment. And as an ally, in every true sense of the word, not just a performative one, that didn't sit well with me. So I'm going to stop there because I want to know what they have to say about that. I want to know if other people are going to call that out, if they noticed it, if that's just me. I'm not sure. But either way, I didn't like it and it felt extremely gross to me. So the last thing that I'll say here is that at the club, Nia warned Danny against using his hips because apparently Danny had this like dirty dancing, nobody puts baby in a corner movement, being like, all I do is hip movements. And then he proceeded to like complain to everybody who would listen about the injustice of being unable to shake his dick around, which is wild. And I just want to point out that the reason these issues get big is because Danny makes them big. And the fact that he feels his need to assert his dominance when it comes to bodies and touch and making other people uncomfortable, the fact that he lacks empathy, concern, and understanding about the topic is, to me, weird and concerning. Danny, Luke, and Jesse proceeded to like strip and grind in front of everyone, yelling, "Get uncomfortable." And that's the part that bothered me. So it's like people are telling you they're uncomfortable about your behaviors when you're drunk. And then this is what you do. And you yell, "Get uncomfortable," which indicates that it indicates a lot of things. And then he got in the bus and had like a literal king baby tantrum, acting like a petulant child. And, you know, Nia just fawns and she's like, uses her dulcet tones. She uses her platitudes and her toxic positivity to get Danny to just like not freak out. And he's a child. Danny's a child. And watching him just makes my head want to explode. So for today, that's going to be it. I will continue to talk about Next Gen New York City. I will talk more about I will talk more about all of these things. But this bite-sized bish isn't a full episode. So stay tuned. Next week, there is an episode, A Darling Bish Hour, where Amy and I cover Maternal Instinct on Netflix. Oh my gosh. Talk about psychologically rich and wild. So the episode is, you know, it's dark, it's triggering, but I talk a lot about the psychology underneath Taylor Parker and things like that. So you can stay tuned for that. And again, as always, please, if you would be so kind, give a 5-star review, look into joining the Patreon community. And thank you so much for listening. Thanks to every single person who listens to this podcast and supports me. I will never stop being amazed and flattered and humbled by that. So thank you all for your support and I appreciate you very much. So today I'm going to say sending love to you and yours and ta-ta for now. Disclaimer. Posts are not intended to diagnose, treat, or provide medical advice. Your Bish therapist is for entertainment and informational purposes only. The podcast, my opinions, and posts are my own and not associated with past or present employers, any organizations, Bravo TV, Greyheart Productions, or any other television network. The information in YBT podcast and on its social media is provided for general informational purposes only and is not intended to diagnose or treat. Please do not act or refrain from acting based on anything you read, see, or hear on YBT podcast or associated social media. Communicating with YBT via email and or social media does not form a therapeutic alliance. Melissa, operator of YBT, is unable to provide any therapeutic advice, treatment, or feedback.